we can kick off. I wanted to really kick off. I love learning about, what it was like growing up for you. Baltimore, is that where you grew up?
I was born in Baltimore. It's an interesting story.
Okay.
My family, so I have a unique background. My mother's from Iraq originally, and my dad
Okay.
is Hungarian, mixed Czech Hungarian.
Okay.
And so she escaped Iraq. She's a Jewish. She ended up in Israel. And my dad, his family was in the Holocaust. Most of them were killed. They ended up in Israel. So he and my mom ended up having my brother and my sister in Israel.
Okay.
My dad's a super genius, has a PhD in bioengineering, master's in physics, master's in computer science, and ends up getting a request to go to Johns Hopkins to do research.
Hmm.
And so that's why I was born in Baltimore. It was kind of an accident. I'm the only American in my family. He said, I'm not going unless my wife can come. And I, like, she was pregnant with me at the time. And that's how I ended up there.
All right. So where did you grow up?
When I was really young, I was in Israel, and then back to the United States for a bit, and then Canada. I spent a lot of my childhood in Canada.
Wow. Okay. So you get to see a lot of the world as a young guy.
Yeah, but we always used to go to New York. My parents have a fondness for like New York, the United States, and so I grew up coming here as much as possible. And then when I was 18, I just took off to the United States.
Yeah. No, that's cool. I love talking to children of immigrants because I think you grow up in a very different way than those of us that are just born stateside to American parents. What was it like growing up with two parents, that immigrated here with a family, and what was that like?
I mean, I only have my perspective, so it's hard to say kind of any
Yeah.
frame of reference other than what I experienced. But it's interesting, it took me many years to realize kind of the trauma that my parents had been through was not normal, if that made
Mhm.
sense.
Yeah.
You grow up, and my mom would always say, "Oh, keep your head down when you go outside," or she had like a certain amount of fear with everything we did. And, don't tell people where you're from. It's not necessary. And, that's just permeated. Again, she escaped a war torn country,
Yeah.
and so it affected virtually every decision that she made. My grandfather, there's some personal things, but my grandfather was alive after the Holocaust, but he lost his whole family to the Nazis. And so that kind of, again, there were certain things he did, which were just strictly out of self protection to
Mm.
us that were not normal things that a kid might necessarily go
Yeah.
through. I didn't even remember, like my parents had to tell me these stories. And so from that perspective, I think it's interesting that as a child, this was a big lesson for me as a child. You have no perspective of what other people are going through. You think your experience, even if it's not normal, is normal. You think
Right.
that's what everyone has. But I'm lucky. I had wonderful parents. I have a wonderful family. So blessed.
Yeah. How do you think some of the lessons you learned as a kid have helped you in your professional career?
I think just seeing people overcome adversity from such a young age and never seeing themselves as a victim was a huge thing for me. Especially my mother never saw herself as a victim. Always push through. You can do it. Doesn't matter what you're going through. And again, we're talking about war. And so when these other things in my life might have come up, and I've had adversity in my life, and we can get into that if you
Yeah.
want. But
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
there's been some real things that have kind of pushed me back to the brink of what I could handle. Right. And a lot of it had to do with my health. I was diagnosed with an autoimmune disease, but those lessons that came from my family, from their history, and seeing them overcome it, seeing them being able to push through, and seeing the things they appreciate. I have a very strong love for the United States beyond, I think, what most people have. I have a
Yeah.
true passion for it. And it comes from understanding what the rest of the world is like and just how special we have it here.
Hmm. It's
And so
funny. One of the questions I had for you is, why do you love the United States so much? Because you will get into some of the marketing and the messaging and all that in a bit. But that was one of my questions for you.
so I would say that the foundational values of the United States are the most wonderful, free, and conducive to a positive life that exists in the entire world. I really do see the United States as a bastion of hope and freedom.
Mm.
I'm unabashedly, unashamed promoting the United States, and I don't care what people say. And again, I'm willing to put my company behind it. I'm willing to put my career behind it because it's not even about the United States. The United States to me represents an idea.
Hmm.
more than just a country. And, other people have said that historically. I'm not the first one to
Yeah.
come out and say it, because the United States is an idea. And so I really do stand behind that. And again, seeing what my parents went through, seeing what the world can turn into like that. And a lot of people always tell me, oh, the world doesn't get bad that fast, but it does. I know firsthand. I saw it with my family. I know how fast things can turn. And there's certain things I see happening in the United States right now that I feel, if they're not addressed, could really decay what we have here. And so I'm very adamantly fighting to kind of preserve the things I care about.
Yeah. Do you think that, a lot of folks that have grown up in the United States, it's been easy for them, and because it's easy, they have no, I just feel like they don't have a comparison to what you've been through or what you've seen. So they think it can't change, nothing can possibly happen here, we're safe. So we focus on things that maybe are a little bit less important.
So I think there's two types of there's two types of ways to observe things that go on. There's people who observe things that go on and have a true sense of normalcy, right?
Mm,
They have a sense of consistency. And so they say, if things start declining, it doesn't matter, because normalcy always prevails. It will
mm,
always swing back to where I need it to, because that's how my whole life has been. Again, it comes back to perspective. They only have their perspective. And so from their perspective, those things just don't happen. Look at someone who's never been in a fist fight, but has talked a lot, gotten into people's faces and done things. And then the day they get into a fist fight, I'm sorry, my computer keeps making this tweet noise. I don't know what it is.
I can't hear it, so keep going.
Okay, so the second they get into a fist fight, their whole perception of reality changes, and they can't deal with it, right? They freeze up. I can't believe that happened. You see all types of situations where someone's idea of reality shifts very quickly, and they're not equipped to deal with it because they haven't experienced before that kind of trauma. They don't have that perspective. And so the other category of people is people who have that perspective, who don't hold on to a sense of normalcy, who say things can change. The
Mm,
coronavirus is a perfect example of it. It forced everyone to lose their sense of normalcy, right? Every single person in the country. Now, there was a beauty to that because we all went through it together,
yeah.
right? We had a collective, and sadly that created a division. You see, there's two camps pretty much with COVID. But in the greater sense of things, if you're an individual who has no sense of normalcy, it's much easier to see these things and say, whoa, 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 we need to stop this now before it goes further, and not be complacent.
Mm,
So I don't necessarily think that they've had it easy. There's people who've lived in, extreme poverty, who have had very hard lives. But from their perspective, they're still able to maintain the sense of normalcy, that the government's not going to come to their house and take away their kids for posting something on Facebook or or Twitter, and there's not going to be re-education camps, and there's not going to be, a civil war. All these things are crazy ideas to a lot of people.
yeah.
But things can escalate at any time to a place that it's very hard to come back from.
Mm. So how do you go about your day to day, knowing that things can change, but still attacking the day to day without the worry or the angst taking you over personally?
So I'll say this. I mean, like anything I do, and this comes back even to business, even because, starting a business, there's a lot of anxiety behind it. Anything you do in life, anytime you're putting yourself into something fully and you're risking your own money, your own time,
Mm,
your own effort, it comes back to, what do I have control over? And as long as I focus on the things I have control over, and I don't put any time, it's just wasted energy. Anytime I'm focused on a task or an idea that I cannot affect, I have to force myself to drop it.
yeah.
I tell myself, hey, there is no value in this. So I go back to what I can do. What I can do is I can build my company. I can create value through my company. I can put out these messages through my company. I can build my career. And that's helped me, right? Because I take all that anxiety, I take all that stress, and I put it towards something that is functional. I make it actionable. I hate the notion of something just staying out there in the ether.
Mm,
Oh, this could happen, I'm going to stress about this. No, this could happen. What can I do right now, today, that is the best possible course of action that can help me and other people I love around me? And so that's what I'm always fixated on.
yeah, I love that. Elon, what do you think about this though? Taking your point, do you think that some folks today are again so entrenched in themselves and their own stuff that they're not seeing some of the things that are going on around them, or they're
Well, I think that
choosing not to?
I fully agree. I think that's just there's a certain amount of, I would say, social programming. We become self-consumed. I mean, there's a whole slew of things going on, right? You have, number one, we're kept in our houses. So our mode of communication has changed to even distance ourselves further from human contact and more into tech kind of related platforms, which was an inevitable anyway, but it's been scary for years. Now we've just seen it escalate
Yeah.
because you become numb to that human interaction and you start just becoming self-obsessed, self-consumed. It's about my post. It's about what I'm putting online. It's about my experiences. It's me, me, me. And you start creating your own ecosystem, right?
Mm.
You look at Instagram, you look at Facebook, you look at Twitter, you look at all these things there. You create your own self-contained ecosystem where you're only exposed to the ideas and the experiences you want to have. You're protected in that world. And that's why people can't handle things anymore, right? Because they get put into this ecosystem. They say, I don't want to have any, experiences that make me uncomfortable. And then the second an idea comes in that challenges you, you can't deal with it. And so if there's someone telling you, hey, the world is not as perfect as you believe it is, that's a scary thing. And you've been blocking it off. It's very hard to deal with it.
Yeah. Yeah. You just unfollow those people.
Yeah. Or block them or say it's hate speech or they're, KKK, whatever, default you want to. I get called a KKK
Yeah.
guy.
No, I can see it.
I mean, I'm like, well, how is that possible? How can I be, how can I be a like, how can I be, my father's family died in the Holocaust. My mother escaped Iraq. How can I, it's like, I'm adamantly against that ideology. It is in direct opposition. They want to kill me.
Yeah.
And yet I'm accused of supporting that just for having, any type of dialogue that does not fit the modern day mainstream narrative. It's really, really, really
Concerning
crazy.
in some ways. Yeah, no, it's crazy. Something that I always, sometimes I find myself getting a bit entrenched in some of the social media. And what I do is when I take the app off my phone, it's amazing how that whole universe actually dies. It dies off. It no longer exists because I'm no longer putting my thoughts and my own time there, which is a very interesting concept too. How real are these universes that we've decided to spend so much time on?
Well, there is
Or
real as
in.
when, yeah, you're absolutely right. And I'm kind of a victim of the same thing. Like I get caught up in these, you know, these worlds that are online and like start putting energy toward them. And it hurts your real relationships, right? You
Yeah.
start fixating on all this negativity that's there. And I get into like Facebook battles that are so
Yeah.
useless, but they're not real. And actually, these are people that you probably get along with great when you guys are hanging out watching a movie, or whatever it is. And there's this whole, like you said, this fake universe
Yeah.
that kind of controls the way we think and can be very toxic. So
And from the entrepreneurial side of things, there's also, again, I talk to a lot of different people, and many of them feel today like I have to be there. Like if I'm not there, I won't have a business. I won't have a company. And if you think about it, back in the 1980s, 1990s, even early 2000s, nobody relied on these platforms for as an exclusive, storefront for their business. So do we need it as much as we are telling ourselves?
that's a tough question to answer. I
Yeah.
think there's a hybrid answer to that. The sense of the fact that retail has kind of died out is very scary, but it does kind of put you in a position where you do need to use social media and you do need to use these other platforms. I hate the whole influencer marketing thing,
Yep.
but we do use Facebook ads. We don't rely on it as our primary means of selling watches. Again, I think the world today, any business that starts is going to have an element of being a content creation business. I always tell people this. Anytime someone asks me, what's the number one tip you can give to someone in business? I always say, see your product as more than just a product.
Mm.
You are a message. And then beyond that, you are creating content for that message. And your product is a part of that content.
Yeah.
And so people can connect with the message, they can connect with the content, and they can connect with your product. When you have those three things, it doesn't matter if it's a Facebook message, if it's a storefront, people will come find you.
Yeah.
People are becoming more and more committed to finding products. It's just the way the world is nowadays that are in line with their views because there's so much divisiveness. I wish it didn't have to be that way, but it seems like
Yeah.
that's where.
It's interesting as you say that, I'm thinking about Netflix. There's I forgot the name of the show, but there's a culinary show, and there's this gentleman in Italy that has a meateria there. And I'm like, I would want to go to Italy based on the content that I saw and travel to this small village in the middle of nowhere and try this guy's food. But it was his content creation through the, platform of Netflix that now has a guy in New York and Florida saying I would go over the ocean to get there and through the villages to this guy's place. So to your point, we will go anywhere if we are captivated enough and engaged enough with the content.
Yeah.
which is pretty cool. Which your content is actually very engaging. But I want to ask you this: for you, do you, with your content, do you go into it saying, "Hey, I'm targeting everybody," or I'm leaning more towards conservatives, I'm going to the right? You know, your messaging can be interpreted that way.
Well, very easily. I mean, I'm not going to lie. I'm more, I guess the new term for it is conservatarian or whatever you want to say. I have more right-leaning views, but I also don't believe that government should really impose its will on anyone. We should be able to live the lives we want to live. And so the messages I put out just happen to resonate more with people on the right. And I'm not ashamed of that. I'm actually proud of that. It doesn't bother me at all. I think people on the right don't have companies backing them up and don't have those voices right now. So if I could be one of them, absolutely. But there are a lot of people on the left. I mean, if you're talking about what's the perfect kind of goal when I go into this, is that I hope some people on the left watch it and say, okay, that's a humanizing message. I actually understand his point of view. And he's not vilifying anyone. And a lot of the messages, the big thing that happened with the Gillette ad, this is like a year and a half or 2 years ago when we did the What is a Man ad, difference between those ads isn't one was so, dramatically different. It was that the fundamental idea behind it was one was an ad of vilification and lecturing, and the other one was an ad of humanizing. And so I'm always coming at it from the perspective of, can I humanize this group that I feel is being vilified, or this group that needs attention on it that actually is right now everyone's against them. So whatever that is, I'm coming at it to humanize. I'm not ever going to say men are good while bashing women. I'm going to say men are good and we can lift up everyone by lifting up men. And that also lifts up women, and that women are great too. And so it's like, but right now I'm focusing on men. I'm focusing on the things that men go through, or like the police ad I put out. I didn't go out and start attacking all these, there's legitimacy behind a lot of things that people are concerned about. We can talk about that, but this group is being heavily vilified. We need to humanize them. And that's how we're going to move forward as a society. So anytime I go into it, I don't necessarily think about politics. I think about humanizing.
Yeah. No, it's very cool. I actually never thought about it like that, but I appreciate how you put it, because it's very cool.
Well, I think that's the fundamental difference, sadly, but behind a lot of the debates I see nowadays, where one side, the second you call someone a Nazi, the second you put down someone, the second you say because of their ideas they're worthy of being attacked, you're now in a state of vilification. You're no longer in a state of dialogue. You're in a state of attack. And the other party's in a state of defense. And you put them in a position where their only option is eventually to escalate. And so everything I put out is in the hopes of de-escalation, is in the point of us humanizing each other and understanding each other. And so in the end of the day, my dream world is a world where even one video I put out kind of opens a little bit of people's eyes, saying, hey, maybe it's not healthy to do this. Maybe we could take a step back. Doesn't mean that our views are discredited, because the second you challenge someone, they go, oh, you're discrediting my views. You're attacking me. And it's like, no, wait a minute. I'm just trying to say that let's look at this party and let's not put them down completely. Let's have a dialogue over it.
Yeah.
And so it's gotten very hard because, again, that victim mentality. People, if you fundamentally see yourself as a victim and you see someone as an oppressor, and we see this I'm adamantly against identity politics. I think identity politics is the end of any healthy society.
Yeah.
It is the fundamental thing I'm against. I don't care what race you are, what religion you are, what gender, all this stuff doesn't matter to me. It's are you as a person, an individual, and not to bring God into it, but God created us as divine, as unique. And so to pull that away from people, to take that from people and make them part of a group identity and then tell them you're oppressed or you're an oppressor. Again, it's anti-God, but it's also anti-functional for any type of progress in society.
And I think too, what's interesting is so many people, they just want to be a part of something. So that has some pull, saying, hey, come on over here and hang with us. And I think sometimes people may not even care that much about the message. They just feel accepted as a part of this group, and they assimilate to the group.
And they get a dismissal of personal responsibility, right? Like if something goes wrong in my life, the hardest path you can take is saying, I am ultimately 100% responsible for the outcome of this. In other words, bringing it back to, this is a little bit personal, but a few years ago, about 4 years ago, I always had psoriasis.
Yeah.
And I would manage it. I'd get treatments. It's not bad. I had it at one point all over my body. But I started getting joint pains and stuff like that. I started getting random, like flu-like symptoms. And then I was always a very competitive martial artist. And then I started losing feeling in my legs. So I go to this specialist, and he goes, "Hey, you have no reflexes in your legs. This is kind of scary. Let's send you for an MRI." The next day, I got a call at 8 a.m. "Hey, we found a tumor in your spine." I'm like, "Oh man, that's it. I'm dead. I'm dead." I read online, you have 10 months to live if they find, like, that's the average lifespan. Anyway, he's like, "We just have to make sure it's not cancer." Turned out it wasn't cancer. They give me blood tests. They find my autoimmune disease is attacking my whole body. It's attacking different parts of me. And they're like, "You may not even walk in 4 months." Right? Like, that's how bad it is. You need to have a surgery. 50-50 chance this surgery is going to be successful. But if you don't do it, there's like a 5% chance you're going to be walking, permanent nerve damage. So I'm met now with a choice. I could see myself as a perpetual victim and say, why did this happen to me? I don't deserve it. And I can give up, and I can be like, oh no, I'm never going to walk again. But I was lucky. It's very easy to get pulled into that, to kind of dismiss the, like, now a doctor has told me it's not your fault. You're going to be in this situation, and you're going to be disabled. And so you just kind of get sucked into that. And I had a friend who was a doctor, and he said, "Don't listen to anyone. I know you. You're powerful enough to get through this every day. Just work, use your mind, move your legs, move your legs." And I did it every day. I told myself, I'm not going to be a victim. The power of the mind is incredible. I said, I'm not going to be disabled. I'm not going to have problems walking. And after a year, I was able to run again. I'm doing Brazilian jiu-jitsu again.
Nice.
I'm always going to have the mass there. If it moves, it causes problems. I'm totally living a functional, healthy, happy life despite that. And so it's very easy when the message is constantly, imagine you're bombarded with these negative messages where you're told you can't do, you can't do, you can't do. Like I was with my back, it started making me very depressed. I started accepting it. So if you're inundated with this, someone's telling you because of your skin color, you cannot be successful, and that someone is oppressing you. Every day you're hearing that, right? Every day from the time, and the messages are coming in like that. Life is harder for you. That doesn't mean life isn't harder for you. There's very many arguments that can be made that life is harder for you, but what do you do with that? Do you just give up? Or do you say, okay, life is going to be harder for me, but I'm still going to succeed? And so that should always be the message, a message of empowerment. Sadly, I think this whole identity politics thing is a message of the opposite. It's a message of victimization.
Yeah. Yeah. I just always wondered who said it was going to be easy.
Yeah.
I mean, again, you can go back just looking at the history of time, whether it's your family or any family, there's always been major points of resistance, at different places and levels. So to think that it would be easy would be you're making an epic mistake.
By the way, it wouldn't even be worth it if it was easy.
Yeah.
Nothing in life. Adversity is the biggest gift someone can have, because adversity gives you the opportunity to be great. Without adversity, there is no greatness.
Yeah. Well, you think about as recently as this past week, you have the Powerball and the Mega Millions, and you sit back and you say, man, what would I do with that billion? And, you probably wouldn't do that much different, right? And then you start to think, like, those of us that are in business are like, wait, but like that grind and that hell that I face every day trying to move that snowball up the hill, like, if that wasn't in our lives anymore, how much fun, we wouldn't have any challenge.
Exactly.
And then what? Right? I mean, how do you build a watch brand and now you have this, infusion of $1 billion? It's like, okay, well, it's cool. I have this money, but it was fun when I was grinding and trying to figure out how to make it go.
Well, I mean, the feeling of accomplishment is the most powerful feeling. I actually thought about that. I said, what would I do with my watch company if I won $1 billion just like that? I was like, I'd keep running my business. I mean, and in the end of the day, yeah, materialistic stuff is fantastic, but it's never going to beat the sense that you created something. That's always going to be more valuable. It's a question I ask myself all the time. If I had $1 billion suddenly infused into my life, what would I do with it? And it always comes back to the same thing. Not that much would actually change.
Yeah. Yeah. It's true. So I wanted to talk to you about the watch company a little bit. What inspired, of all the things that you could have done, why watches?
So the whole company started from, again, I was a rough kid. I was a little bit of a troublemaker, and my dad was there. He never gave up on me, kind of pulled me through it. And it would have been really easy to give up on me because I was just rowdy. I was not a good kid. And then I got older and I had these health problems, and my dad again flew to come stay with me because I was going through all this stuff, and didn't give up on me. Always told me, you're going to be fine. You're going to make it through it. And so it got to a point where I wanted to say thank you. I wanted to try and find a way to make it up to him. And so I started looking at making a watch. And so the reason I looked at making a watch, actually, I was looking at buying him a watch. I thought it was the coolest gift you can get someone. My girlfriend got me really into watches.
Mm.
And so I was looking for a very unique watch that kind of represented everything I wanted to give to him. Something with like an architectural vibe where it had textures to the dial and layers and
Yeah.
a nice automatic movement. So I couldn't find anything that I felt was representative of that. And at the time I was working in a 3D studio doing previs. So I had access to like all these 3D printers, and this is back when they weren't as popular.
Yeah.
I had access to good software. So I just started designing one just for the fun of it. And I was like, wait a minute, I can actually get this made. I can actually make this watch. And so I had made him a watch as a gift and gave it to him and put it on forums to get feedback saying like, is this nice? And people started asking to buy it. So I made a limited run of 50 and then I made another design. And my dad was like, everyone's loving this watch. When they see it, you should make watches. And so it turned into a business through that.
Wow. Super cool. And Egard, that's how you pronounce it, right?
Well, it's a French word. It's Egard is the right
Oh.
way, but we call it Egard. Yeah, Egard watches. But it just means in consideration of, or in respect to, or in respect of in French.
Okay. Very, very cool. So prior to this, you had no experience in the watch business.
No, just a lot of experience in 3D modeling and previs and all that kind of stuff.
Okay. So Ilan, before you got involved, let's say with this watch business, who were you? What were you about? What were you doing?
Well, the previs, I always martial arts my whole life. I was teaching martial arts, and I had a background in acting. So I've acted in a lot of TV shows.
Yeah.
I was on The Walking Dead for a few seasons. I was on a show called Slasher, which is a Netflix series. I was in Deepwater Horizon for a little bit, just a bunch of different random shows.
Yeah.
And I've always loved that.
I was going to ask you if that was something that you still enjoyed, and do you still pursue? Are you still looking to build that career as well?
You know, it's tough with my political views to build that career. I always worry about it.
Yeah.
I was just on Fox today. You know, they marked me as the star of The Walking Dead. I'm like, I'm not the star of The Walking Dead. Like, where did you guys get that from?
That's
But I
right.
guess
Listen, you know what? It's fun to run with that.
Yeah, but I'm such an honest guy. I felt like it's disingenuous. But I'm in like 4 or 5 episodes.
Okay. Well, you know what it was? They instead of saying the star, they could have put your A star in there.
Yeah, exactly. But whatever it is, I mean, it's not a big deal. But I love acting. I love acting when gives me the opportunity to kind of not only challenge myself, but put something out there that challenges culture, challenges ideas. And sadly, a lot of acting is not going in that direction. A lot of acting and filmmaking is now really, you're either saying and doing exactly what we tell you to, or you're out of the business.
Yeah.
And so a big thing we're doing this year is we're trying to do 10 films on our own, group I'm with, and create our own slate that's outside of Hollywood.
Yeah. No, that's cool. I had Antonio Sabato Jr. on a couple months ago, and that was something that he was thinking of doing too, just because he's kind of has a bit of a label on him as well.
Yeah.
And it makes it difficult because you guys are still great artists and still great at what you do. It's just you believe a little bit differently, but it's also that belief, that different belief that has gotten you to where you are.
Yes.
So it's a double-edged sword.
Look, I mean, in the end of the day, if an industry doesn't want me to work for them, if someone doesn't want to hire me because of my beliefs, that's capitalism. I'm okay with it. Do I think it's ethical? No. I wouldn't put that standard on people, and it's kind of, like I said, it's the world we're creating where eventually you're going to have conservatives buying conservative products, and, people on the left buying products that Democrats make or progressives make. And it's going to be a very divided country, and we're going to kind of live in our own bubbles. And I hope that we don't end up there. I hope that somehow this all gets pulled back. But right now, that's kind of where we're headed. And so they have that choice. They can hire me for any reason, and they can fire me for any reason, and I accept that. Now, all that means is I'm just going to say, okay, what do I have control over again? I have control over potentially making my own platform, going out and making my own films, just like Antonio Sabato Jr., and trying to do it on my own. I mean, that's what's in my power. And so I'm doing that.
which again, the fact that you are an entrepreneur, you're building this business, that's actually the mentality of most entrepreneurs. If you're not going to let me do it, I'm going to find my own way. And
Yes,
probably over time going to figure out how to do it better than you were doing it.
I agree fully.
So that
Yeah.
meant, so you've just, since you launched the watch company, you've been in training.
Man, I've been through a lot with, it's not easy. Watches are a tough industry. Number one, they're not a repeat product for
Mm,
many people. We do get people buying 3 to 5 watches, but those are watch collectors. A lot of people buy one nice watch and they're like, okay, I got the watch, and then won't buy one for 10 years.
yeah. But you know
It's
what I
not,
like about your watches? They're affordable enough to where you can buy 3 to 5 watches, and the looks vary quite a bit, and then you can make your own look.
Mhm.
So it's kind of cool. And especially, some of those of us that are, a bit into the fashion, we like the watch to match this outfit. And, so you could do some different things. I think the watches are super cool. And again, they're not priced at, $15,000, Rolex land and things like that.
So the goal going in was to make these almost like art pieces for your wrist
Mm,
that were affordable. Affordable art for your wrist was kind of my main theme going in. And that's why you have those crazy unique shapes and those, funky dials and all that
yeah.
stuff. And the hopes was that it does motivate people to kind of collect them and get into watches and wear them with different outfits. And I think a lot of people have gotten into watches. When they buy one of our watches, they end up buying like 2 or 3 more, which is always nice.
Oh yeah. What was it like pushing your way into a I'd say somewhat crowded category? Um, what was that like?
Well, it was, finding a way to stand out. So there was multiple, again, it came down to what is our message? And initially the message, I wasn't planning on ever making the company political or putting out these
Yeah.
messages. The message originally was about, I'm making this for my father. It's about legacy. It's about this kind of positive bond between a father and a son. And if people connect to that, then that might be the right watch for them.
Mm.
And then luckily I had those connections in Hollywood, and I got some celebrities to wear them, which helped also. And I just hustled. People go, how do you get celebrities? I'm like, well, I made 1,000 calls, as many calls as I had to make to just get one person to wear the watch. You're like, oh, I made some calls. It's hard. I can't. I'm like, I always tell people, your goal should be to get a no. And people are like, why would you ever tell someone to try and get a no? You're always trying to get a yes. I'm like, no, if your goal is to get a no, you're going to keep calling because you're going to be encouraged by the fact that you're getting a no. And then eventually a yes will come around. Like if you're always trying to get a yes and you don't, it's very disheartening. It's very hard to deal with that. So when I'm making a phone call, I go in, I'm like, all right, I need to get a no so I can check it off my list and go to the next one. I'm actually just trying to make it through my list for the day
Yeah.
of my 500 people to call. And so no, okay, no, okay, no, okay, no, okay, yes. And then I'm like, oh man, there came a yes. It was unexpected.
Yeah.
And so my expectation is lower than reality.
Yeah. I love that. It's cool. You put yourself out there, you embrace rejection rather than, just say, I'm not doing it because I may get rejected. You're saying, hey, reject me until you don't.
Yes. Reject me until you don't. Who's the guy who, is his name Les Brown, motivational speaker?
Yeah.
He came out and he's like, I came back that first day. He wanted to work as a radio jockey. And he's like, the guy said no. He's like, I came back the next day. The guy said no. Came back the third day. Goes, you just were here 2 days ago. He's like, yeah, and today's another day. And he just kept doing it until the guy got so annoyed and said, go get me a coffee. And he's like, yes, sir.
Yeah.
He was
But you know what?
tired.
There's something to be said for that because, just think about your own life. That person that keeps coming at you, there's like a tenacity and a relentlessness. You at first you dismiss them, but over time you say, man, this guy or gal, they just keep coming at me. Let me just give them the 20 minutes they want, sometimes just to get them out of your way permanently. But there's usually something that engages you about those types of people.
Yeah, and people are busier than we give them credit for. So like we'll sometimes reach out to someone and be like, oh, they didn't write back. They're not interested. I'm going to let it go. A lot of the time, it's just that they're so distracted with other things. It happens with me where I'm interested in something. It's why retargeting is so important when you're
Yeah.
trying to sell a product. If you don't retarget your product, people forget, even
Yep.
if they love your product. And so it's the same way when you're trying to get someone to listen to you. Retarget them, keep emailing them and if they don't like you, they'll block you. In the end of the day, the end result is the same either way, right? So if if there's no possible outcome where they will talk to you, whether you email them 1,000 times or email them once, the outcome will be the same. You didn't get what you needed from that person. But
Mm.
if there's a 1% chance that that 50th email is getting through to them, and they're like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I've just been so busy. Thank you for reaching out. Let's have that talk. then you're the one guy who sent those 50 emails.
Yeah.
So,
You know what I always tell people when I speak? I say, listen, unless you're just going to give somebody, hey, listen, call me and I'll give you $10,000, for calling me back. Most people are not thinking about calling. You're not at the front of their mind. So when you realize that, it's the same concept, right? Just keep calling, keep retargeting. It's like in sales, right? Follow up, follow up, follow up, follow up.
well, it's just how hungry are you?
Yeah.
Right. And again, within a degree of respect, you look at fighters who go into the octagon, not to bring Conor McGregor into this, but I don't know if you watch UFC.
I know he got beat last night, but I don't watch as much as I probably should.
Well, I mean, it's like, that's the one sport I like, but I'll say this, I'll be like, and he said it himself. He was very humble in defeat, which is something I respect. But he said, I've been inactive. He's like, and there's people here who are hungry, who are active. And he's like, I just need my time. I need to put in my time and I can get back there. And his message is actually the perfect business message. He goes, if you put in the time and you stick around long enough, it'll happen for you.
Yeah.
And he's like, and I haven't been doing that. And that's not an excuse. I mean, that's the truth. If you're not in there, fighting is just kind of an extreme version of what everyone is doing. We're trying to build companies. We're trying to do this thing. If you don't put in the time, if you don't put in the work, there's someone out there who is trying to do something probably very similar to you. And so how are you going to compete? You can't. So
I love that. That's a powerful message, especially, by a guy like him that is so out there and so, energized to come back and say, hey, from a humble standpoint, somebody wants it more than me and they were willing to do the work.
You know what that is? That's the curse of talent. Right. And it's the curse of a great idea in business where you think the great idea alone will carry you. It's all the same thing, right? The great idea alone will not carry you. The talent will not carry you. Eventually, the time is what's going to carry you. The activity.
Yeah.
If you're inactive, there's someone who is more active than you. Their activity will beat your good idea. Their activity will beat your talent. So are you the hungriest guy in the room? And you can hear it 1,000 times. And yet,
Yeah. Listen, I spent my whole career with the Yankees and people would say, hey, what makes Derek Jeter so good? What makes Mariano Rivera so good? Is it their talent alone? I said, no. I said, these guys are very boring, but they do the same thing day in and day out, and never get bored of a boring routine because they know what works for them. And they'll outwork you in their level of consistency.
Yeah. When talent what is it? Hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard. But if talent works hard, that's the ultimate combination.
And you get Tom Brady.
Yeah, you get Tom. You get a legend. You know what I mean? In whatever it is. And so a lot of people I don't even worry about other people. I just worry about, can I live to the full extent of my potential?
Yeah.
Because I don't see myself, if there's a watch company out there that makes $200 million in a year and they blow up and they did it in their first year, and I'm happy for them. I don't see it as it doesn't pull away from me. They actually got more people into watches. Those are customers who could convert over to me. And so a lot of people actually see people as competition. I'm like, no, everyone in an industry who's working together, if you're an athlete and I'm an athlete and you get better, that just means I have to get better. And so I'm always just trying to live to my full potential. If I'm second best, but it's my full potential, then that's where I'm at, then I can accept that. I can live with that. I'll be very happy so long as I live to my full potential.
Yeah. So as you build this brand out, what is your overall goal for the watch company? Like what is it that you're trying to do?
Well, it's turned into a platform to kind of help show that companies can stand behind certain messages. That's a huge thing right now that I do believe the company is good for. That wasn't the original goal. The original goal was to grow a legacy and to offer people something that they can give to a loved one that they'll have for generations and generations and generations. I've always been obsessed with the idea of death from a young age. It's always just the idea that we're limited, that we disappear, and what does that mean and what comes after, and that everything is so temporary. It's always kind of eaten away at me. So I've always just had this drive to create. And then the watches always represented something that you could just keep giving to people. It's like a part of you, a part of your soul just is in that watch. And it gets carried on through time. It's like I get to live on through that watch. I'm a memory through that watch. And so that was the idea behind the company.
No, that's cool. I write books and I look at books the same way. It's like you may be gone, but the book stays, right? You may be gone, but the watch is something, that could be passed through the generations.
Yeah. A book, especially because your words continue on. So it's kind of a
Yeah.
beautiful.
But your words continue on through the timepiece, you know, the stories that the brand has told, which is super cool.
Yeah.
So that, I mean, listen, that's what grabbed me, you know, when I saw, you know, the messaging. I just thought you used the word humanizing, and I loved it because I connected with it. You know, my
Oh,
wife connected with it, and we said, wow, that's great. And he happens to be selling a watch. You know, it was like a
that
great story, and then the watch comes along.
yeah, and the truth is, I don't put out the stories to sell the watch. I don't want someone to just buy the watch because they like the story. I want them to buy the watch because they like the watch
Yeah.
and that they want to have something. And I tell people all the time when they write in, I'm buying a watch just to support your company. I don't need one. I tell them, don't buy it. You know, give that money to charity. Buy a
Hmm.
watch because you want to support the company and you want to watch. That's important to me. And so the product in the end of the day has to be something people want, at least I hope
Yeah.
for, um, but yeah, it's interesting kind of the way things have escalated in that way where I didn't know how passionate I'd be about taking these stances until those things happened. I didn't go into it knowing that's what the company would be and that's what it would represent. But as society has changed and my company became big enough to actually have a voice in that arena, that became the more important thing to me. So
Yeah. No, I think it's cool too, and it's somewhat of it's a blend of your acting career, the like the film, the I may not be using the right words, but like the cinematography. You're blending everything with your own personal message and the watch. Everything is like, so when you put those out, it's, for me, it's a representation of humanity, but it's also you as well. You're wrapped in those advertising based films as well.
you know, I do those all myself. That's my voice, my editing. It's all
Oh
me.
wow, that's super cool. I didn't know that.
Yeah, because I don't trust anyone else to kind of get the message out. Though it's such a personal message, you know,
Are
and
you a
it's
control
really.
freak?
Um,
I am. So if you
I
say
well,
yes,
look, I'm
okay.
trying not to be anymore, but
What are you, in your late 30s or early
yeah,
40s?
no, I'm 38.
Yeah, so enough people have told you through the years you're a little bit of a control freak, and then now you're like, yeah, maybe I need to work on that.
Well,
Just
you know,
embrace it.
yeah, because I can work a 14-hour day, and people are like, why don't you just delegate that out? Why don't you just get someone else to do it? I'm like, no, because I need to do it. I need to do it properly. I need to make
Yeah.
sure it's done the way I want. It's happened to me a few times where I'm like, I'll get it. I have my editor to do something and I'll edit it. And then they'll see my edit and they're like, no, that's the better, like use your edit. It's the better edit because it's your voice. It's what you wanted. So why am I going to give that to someone to do when I could do it
I
myself?
think that's the hardest part, you know, for a founder that's involved with their brand still, is that, like, it's just very hard to give things up because you have this special it factor. You have an eye for the slightest detail that whether it's true or not, you feel most people can't see it. I believe most people can't see it,
Yeah, me too.
but it keeps you in it, and sometimes too long. But as long as you're enjoying it, and like that little sliver of greatness keeps you fired up, you know, do you have to cut yourself out, right?
Yeah, I mean, especially right now with everything going on in society, I feel like it's the last time. It's not the right time for me to pull myself out of it. You know what I mean? Like I feel like
Yeah,
now it's actually I should be committing myself even more to those things, as long as it doesn't cause anything else in the business to suffer. In other
yeah,
words, it can't be my obsession.
yeah.
Which is why I don't do them. I get like this weird compulsion where it's like something's going on in society, and I'm like, it keeps building, and I'm like, man, this is. And I just know when I'm gonna make a video or when I'm gonna really push something, and we get it out to our mailing list. And like, I know when I'm gonna do. I don't do that with every video we put out. I do that with the ones that I just suddenly become. It's almost like I just know. I know that this message, I want to put it out, and I'm gonna stand behind it because I feel like I've been silenced in some way.
Yeah, it goes like, it almost goes viral in your head and your heart first.
Yeah.
It's between you and you, and then you're like, I got to get this out.
Yeah. Yeah. I just have to say it.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of people feel that way and they don't have a platform, which is kind of why I'm hoping that my messages are a platform for them, do give them a voice. So, you know, if my message, the recent one about freedom and censorship and everything going on, I was hoping that people would watch that and go, oh, okay, there are other people who feel the same way as me. who have companies who are able to actually take that risk and put that out there and deal with the consequences, like, and still be around, because we live in fear now of saying anything.
Yep.
And so I just want to be one of those people who's like, I'm not in fear. I'm coming out here. I'm opening the door for everyone. And I'm saying, hey, say what you have to say, and we'll all deal with the consequences together, because they can't control us.
Yeah. Has this approach for you, like, since you've owned it and you've gone down this road, have you seen elevation in your brand from it?
We've definitely seen, like you said, the conservative population start getting behind the brand. I've seen a backlash from, I get hate mail, I get stupid stuff, but we've definitely seen a large amount of support from conservatives specifically. And I hate to make it political, but they are starting to come and saying your message, or, is one I believe in. I think it's sad that a message that's counter censorship or humanizing men,
Yeah.
or just saying police do a lot of good. I'm sad to see that those messages are political messages nowadays and are controversial and divisive messages. But that's kind of where it is. And we definitely do see an uptick from conservatives. And I'm starting to, because I believe in those things and the message is genuine. And, you were saying it all kind of came together, right? It came together, right? Because I feel so strongly about these things that it's coming from an honest place. I feel like a lot of time advertising backfires for companies when it's not genuine, when they're just trying to get into an area.
Yes.
You could talk to people who've known me for 15 years. They'll be like, you're the same guy 15 years ago talking about this stuff as you are today. It's just gotten worse, and you've kind of gotten more passionate about it. You've always believed these things. Whereas you look at Gillette, they just had a huge shift. You know what I mean? They went from having positive advertising for men to suddenly toxic masculinity talk, because they thought that's what's trendy.
Yeah.
Those who are the loudest voices in the room. So they're trying to appeal to them. When in reality, you should stick to your core values as a company.
Well, that's a good point, right? Because maybe some of them don't have any core values anymore. What I find is, listen, there's a lot of mission statements, and there's a lot of, maybe core values that were put together by an outside company for these companies.
Yeah.
But what do you stand for, right? What does the leader of of the company stand for? What do the people that make up that company stand for? And that's cool. I think it's powerful that you're willing to go out there and say, hey, here's what I believe in. Here's what the company believes, because that's what I believe. And come with us. Come on the journey.
Yeah.
And if you don't want to come on that journey, that's okay too. Maybe we'll pick you up at a later stop.
Yeah. Maybe one day you'll see our side of it and not hate us for it. And actually, we have some great customers who've written some harsh emails to me. They've bought many watches, and, I actually know them because they've bought so many watches, which is not many customers. And they write me angry emails. And then I have a talk with them, and they actually find a middle ground with me. And they go, I actually do wish the best for your company. I'm not going to stop buying your watches. And I see your perspective on it, and I appreciate the dialogue.
Yeah.
I'm not doing that to get them to keep buying watches. I've actually told them I'll buy back all your watches. If at the end of this conversation, you're not happy with where we end up, I will buy back every watch you've bought.
Which is awesome. I think that, but also I'm sure you learned something too in getting, getting in there, getting in the weeds with the customer.
Well, I mean, it's not only the customer, it's the human. It's the human who is seeing my message and they're hurt by it, or they feel like it's in direct opposition to their worldview and that I'm supporting something evil. And so I need to be able to empathize with their point of view in the hopes that they'll also empathize with my point of view, right? So it's, and not to make it political, but there's all types of policies that have happened, right? So if we look at things that have affected my family from the Middle East personally, there's things that happened under previous administrations that really hurt the Middle East.
Yeah.
And there's things that Trump did, and this is not a support or, or condemnation of Trump. I don't even want to get into that, but there's things that he did in the Middle East, which are fantastic. And I'm allowed to come out and say that that policy helped my family. And if you can't empathize with that, then you're the one who's actually being a very selfish person right now because of your own biases. Yeah. And you have to be able to look at what's helped people and not help people to understand why they're saying and doing the things they're doing. No one's coming out in any situation or in any policy to be like, I want you to suffer. No human, right? No citizen in the United States, just a random. Most people want to feed their families, want to take care of their families, want to have a good life. And so we form our opinions based on that, on what's hurting us and what's hurting others and how can we stop it. Yeah. And so if you come into a debate or into a conversation with that perspective, I understand that you're also trying to help people. We just see it as different. then usually you can find some kind of, I like to believe you can find some kind of middle ground where you understand that we're both coming at it from a good place.
Yeah. It's not me versus you.
It's never really,
Yeah.
it never should be at least, but that's where it all ends up nowadays.
Yeah. And that's unfortunate because that never ends well.
No, and who's doing that to us? Is it us, or is it the media? Is it,
Mm,
politicians? Is it everyone who we're allowing to come in and tell us like, hey, this is what you need to believe. This is what you need to believe. And then our confirmation bias convinces us that this is what we need to believe. And then we go out and everyone else is the enemy.
yeah. Well, listen, I coach people for a living, right? Across all different walks. And the one question I ask is, what do you believe? And you'll be amazed at how many people don't know. So if
Wow.
you don't know what you believe, you open up an opportunity for someone else to tell you what to believe.
Mm-hmm.
So that becomes, somewhat of a dangerous place. So like we mentioned core values before, the one thing I always work to establish with people is, what are your core values? Like, you may know your company's core values, but what are yours, right? And when you know that, you know how to navigate.
Well, it's interesting. I started making these videos for myself originally about kind of how I built my business. I just wanted to break down the things that I did that kind of got me to where I got. And one of the things I realized is you always hear about the why, right? You need a company's why. If you don't have your why, then your company's going to fail. And I realized, well, there's two whys. There's your company's why, and then there's your why.
Mm,
You as the owner of the company, what drove you personally to do this? Because that's a whole lot different than your company and why your company motto. It's far more personal. And
yeah.
often that personal why will create your company's why. And if you can really get a transparent, clear view of what your personal why is, why deep down you're going behind doing all this. And it always bothers me when people have to search for it, because then I feel like you're not being genuine, right? Like if you like, they'll look at other whys and they'll look at other phrases and they'll be like, well, I'm trying to change this and do this. I'm like, no, man, just break it down. What was the real moment? What was that kind of spark that drove you so passionately to risk your money, to spend all this time to do this? And
Yeah.
if you can really connect with that, then you'll have a clear vision moving forward.
So I'm going to give you this. I'll give you a little something here on my end. I think that there's actually something that precedes the why.
Okay.
I alluded to it. It's the who. When you know who, then
Yes.
you'll know why.
I like that a lot.
So it's something.
Yeah.
It's just another way to look at it. But listen. It's all interconnected, and that's what's cool. These kind of conversations, I have them because I want people to relate, and I want people to see the real people behind the messaging, behind the brands. So many people today, they judge people based on what they see on television, and I always say, listen, I've worked with players through the years that were very controversial, but they were some of the greatest people I've ever met. They just believed in something
Mm-hmm.
at a level that most people don't believe it in anything. So you should, embrace, get to know people is really what it comes down to. And that's why I'm glad we got to meet today and have this talk. So before I let you go, I got one more question though.
Sure.
Last one. I
Yeah.
call this the Becoming a Champion show. So I always ask my guests, I say, what does the word champion mean to you?
I would say, okay, to me, a champion is someone who just never stops in the face of adversity, who just keeps pushing forward and doesn't ever give up. I think that, you don't need to be, again, number one to be a champion. You just have to live to your full potential, like I said earlier.
Yeah.
So if you're doing everything day in and day out, you're a champion. If you're consistent in your actions and your focus, you're a champion.
Right. I love that. It's true. It's true. You got to be consistent to achieve anything in any category, right?
I'm going to say one last thing. So people always say, hey, a champion for me would be kind of, I would connect it to being successful. And how do people define success? A lot of people define success as an end goal. And the one thing I would tell people is stop defining it as an end goal. Start looking at it as the actions you take every day. If
Yeah.
someone came to me and said, for me, being successful is being a good father, I'd be like, is being a good father a moment where you suddenly do something and it clicks and all of a sudden you're a good father? Or is it over a lifetime you've been there and you've done everything you have to do to take care of your family and
Mm.
your kids? And that's being a good father. And in any situation, when you look at success, I don't believe in short-term success. I don't believe that is success. I don't believe that phrase actually exists. Sure, I could say it, but
Yeah.
real success is sustainable. Real success is due to consistency. So being a champion would be really tied into that whole be consistent.
No, I love that, man. It's super cool. And it's true.